Hi, it's Chen. For most of us, we have spent a great deal of our lives in school, from the awkward interactions we had in kindergarten to the carefree life we enjoyed in college. Our education is one of the cornerstones of our character and what has shaped our view of the world around us. But what if there are things that were taught to us that were absolutely wrong? Could it be that we have been spending our adult lives believing things that aren't necessarily true? So today we're going to clear up a few things. Here are 5 things you were taught in school that were completely wrong. Number 5, spin it round and round. It's a long-held belief that Christopher Columbus was the man who proved to the world that the earth is round. Back in school, we were taught that in 1492, Christopher Columbus was able to convince the monarchy of Spain and the Catholic Church to fund his expedition to East Asia and prove his point that the earth was a sphere and not a disk floating around in space. He was given permission and funding by both the church and the monarchy only because they believed that Christopher Columbus would fail spectacularly and fall off the edge of the earth. Columbus, however, did not fail his expedition, nor did he fall off the edge into oblivion, but instead was able to sail into the Americas and prove his point. But the truth about this story is actually far different. While the medieval theory of a flat earth is as true as it shall ever be, the claims that Christopher Columbus had a feud with the Spanish monarchy and the church to disprove the said theory was false. Christopher Columbus was inarguably a great navigator. His arguments with Spain and the Pope were for different reasons. However, the story that he proved that the earth was round was also false. The theory that the earth was actually round was proposed by the Greek philosopher Pythagoras 2,000 years before Columbus was even born and before even Spain existed. If Columbus's navigational records and paths were to be observed, you would notice that his calculations as well as navigational techniques at that time were based on the fact that the earth was a sphere. It was actually from Washington Irving that the myth about Columbus originated. Irving, a writer, put together a novel about Columbus in 1848. It was entirely fictional, but somehow some elements of the story managed to make their way into textbooks. How this may have been overlooked is a mystery. Also, though Columbus is credited in many history books as the man who discovered America, it was a Viking named Leif Erikson who beat him to the chase in 1000 AD. Number 4, karma chameleon. Ask anyone why a chameleon changes its colors and you are sure to get the answer that it's for camouflage. And of course, in the animal kingdom, camouflage is an essential tool for adapting to an environment and avoiding predators. There are several insects that appear to be like twigs or plants, and there are sea creatures that are heavily camouflaged as either coral or rock, like the stonefish. But camouflage is not only a tool to invade potential predators, it is also used by some predators to lure their next dinner. For example, the praying mantis can perfectly camouflage itself in a tree and appear to be a leaf on a twig, patiently waiting for a small insect to stray into its direction. The changing of skin color also is used by animals as an early warning system to would-be predators to back off. Marine animals like several species of octopus and squids are known to have extravagant display of colors when threatened, excited, or agitated. The main reason for a chameleon to change its skin color is to hide from predators, and we don't blame the little guy if he needs to hide from larger carnivores, and we have seen this characteristic in action mostly in cartoons. Although there is a little truth to this myth, the purpose of a chameleon's changing color is to regulate its body temperature. As we all know, chameleons are reptiles like lizards, crocodiles, and turtles. Reptiles are of course cold-blooded animals, meaning that they cannot regulate their own body temperature as mammals do. So with slight changes in temperature, reptiles can be rapidly susceptible to heat stroke or hypothermia. That is why crocodiles submerge themselves in water during a heat wave. As for chameleons, since they are more of a tree-dwelling variety of reptile, their defense against the sudden rise or drop in temperature in the environment is their skin color. In order to regulate their body heat, they shift colors accordingly. In a nutshell, on a cold day, chameleons opt for a darker shade of skin color to absorb heat and lighter hue to cool their bodies down. Number 3, whose bright idea was it anyway? Thomas Edison is hailed as one of the world's most brilliant inventors and scientists. He has been the inspiration of many students when it comes to putting something together for their school science fair. I mean, who hasn't been taught in science class about the light bulb, and who has not been taught about the life of Thomas Edison and just how much a stand-up guy he was? And of course, among his many accomplishments was the supposed invention of the light bulb. A revolutionary invention, the light bulb has been extremely useful in all aspects of life, and our science and history teachers never fail to remind us of this great contribution to modern society by Edison. Although, if we manage to look behind the curtains and see what's really going on, we would find out the hard truth that Thomas Edison was not the real inventor of the light bulb. Throughout what we can only assume is the complicated but colorful history of scientific inventions and patent licensing, there have been at least 22 other individuals who have experimented with incandescent light. One of these was Edison's supposed rival, Nikola Tesla. A story goes that Edison and Tesla were at each other's throats, not only for the credit of the light bulb's invention, but also with many other inventions. Accusations of plagiarism and theft were tossed and hurled at each other's camps, a feud that to this day lives in infamy. Whoever may have been the first man to invent the light bulb might be truly lost to history. What is true, at least one version of the story, is the reason why Edison was assumed to be the light bulb's inventor. In a very slick and genius move, Thomas Edison bought the patent for an incandescent bulb from the widow of one Heinrich Goebel. Unfortunately, this story is yet to be confirmed by historians because other similar stories exist concerning the two men, one of which says that Goebel never patented his incandescent bulb and that Edison had his own design of bulbs that he was able to patent before anyone else. Whatever the version of the story, there still has no clear light to be shed on this still unanswered question of who really invented the light bulb. Number 2, a monkey's uncle. Evolution. The acceptance of it is already a point of contention, depending on where you are located or what value systems your school upholds. But despite all this, we are in one way or another aware of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, more specifically that mankind were descended from apes. In his controversial book, The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin outlines several theories that revolve around the development and evolution of certain species of birds and mammals and how their environments can actually affect their development. While most of the theories he has written down have been widely accepted by the Victorian community at the time of his publication, the idea that mankind having descended from apes struck a sensitive chord, most especially with the church. For a time, The Origin of Species was banned until the world slowly began to open up to the advances of modern science and biology. But that's just it. The extent of what many of us were taught and many of us assumed to know about mankind's evolution begins and ends with man descended from apes. This, however, begs the question that if man did evolve from apes, then why are these primates like apes and chimps still hanging around? While our number 2 spot is neither taught wrong or otherwise, it is the lack of information about the subject that helped it become a misunderstood subject. In Darwin's theory, he proposes that man and apes share the same bloodline. During the millennia of man and apes evolution, somehow, somewhere along the way, the bloodline split into 2 different branches, where one evolved into humans and the other into apes and primates that we know of today. And finally, number 1, not so honest Abe. 40 and so many years ago, Abraham Lincoln became one of our favorite presidents, whether it's the tall hat or the funny beard. Back when we were kids dressing up for President's Day, we found ourselves in a veritable sea of honest Abes with only a few Teddy Roosevelts and maybe some Washingtons thrown into the mix. And why should we not be proud to emulate good old Abe Lincoln? He was the man who freed the slaves from their bondage during his time. He was practically the poster boy of the civil rights. He was romanticized by American historians and school teachers as the great emancipator. However, this is not all true. While indeed Abraham Lincoln did emancipate the slaves when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1862, he struggled hard with conflicting and ambiguous views on slavery. The country was still grappling with political unrest, and Lincoln's decision to sign the proclamation was mostly politically motivated and not as much to do with just getting rid of slavery. What he wanted was to make the Union stronger at a time when the Confederate States were waging war against the Union. And in his words, Lincoln stated that if I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union. In the end, the Emancipation Proclamation was not a precursor to the civil rights movement or racial equality. It was a wartime decision that had to be made at the risk of breaking the country apart after years of civil war. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I feel kind of lied to. Also, something else we learned in school, and this is pretty controversial. You know that chart of the Earth, and it has like the mantle and it goes all the way to the core. You know, it's like a color chart where it cuts the Earth in a quarter and it shows you all the layers. Well, the thing is, we don't really know those are actually the layers inside the Earth, because the furthest down we've ever been into Earth is only 8 miles. And recently, there have been scientific findings and discoveries that show the Earth could actually contain oceans of water inside it, and not what we learned in the charts in elementary school. Also, discoveries are made all the time about who really first came to North America. I guess my point is there's so much we don't know about our planet, about our history, because documented history is only 5,000 to 6,000 years, and even those documentations are not that trustworthy. So I guess, yeah, I don't think I know much at all. All right, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you like it, please hit the like button and please subscribe to this channel. I would really really appreciate that. Thank you so much again. See you later.